Welcome to this short guide of Lei Shi Heroic on 10 men. I usually don't do any guides, but I decided to compile this quick guide because the YouTube search is not coming up with any hits if you type in 10 men heroic guide for Lei Shi. I hope you enjoy this and have fun. First things first, this should not be a guide you can follow with every raid composition, but I will show you the new abilities she does on heroic mode and show you what worked for us when we first killed her. Assuming you're familiar with the fight on normal mode, there are two new abilities you have to take care of. One is the protect, which will happen at every 20% HP missing, and there's an additional ad for every phase, so at 20% you will have a lot of ads to take care of and they will hit really hard. And the second ability is Carry Fog. It's the circle around her you can see here, and from the tooltip it's probably not exactly clear what it does, but it's actually fairly easy when you break down the ability into certain steps. So why is it hard, you might ask? Well, let's start with the easy part. People outside this ring around her will gain stacks of the debuff and people inside will not. What happens when you get a stack of a debuff is that you take increased damage and you will have this circle around you, as you can see right now. And not only you take increased damage, but people and mobs inside this circle around you will all take increased damage. So this is fairly important because Lei Shi has a lot of hit points and she needs to be debuffed throughout the fight so you can actually meet the enrage timer. That means that what you have to do as a raid is you have to have certain people assigned to gain a certain amount of stacks and go in and out to debuff the boss and refresh the stacks on themselves. Since the debuff also does damage to you, all classes with damage reduction abilities are better suited to stack the debuff. Generally speaking, mages and warlocks are very good for this job because of Blink and Portal, but other classes like hunters work very well as well because of their mobility. To my knowledge, there are two basic strategies for this fight. You can either take 2 tanks and do it a normal way, or you take 3 tanks where the third tank is just standing outside and gaining stacks of the debuff. If you have a Blood Knight tank in your roster, you could try this and have him outside and DPS with his ranged abilities, and when he reaches 20 stacks, which is the maximum, you have him run in and debuff the boss and run out again before the stack drops. If you don't, you can just use 2 tanks like we did and have 2 or 3 people outside stacking the debuff. We had 2 hunters and a warlock, but I guess 2 people also work. The advantage of using 3 people is you don't have to stack the debuff as high on them individually as you would have when you're only using 2 people. So we had 3 people and they were gaining stacks in the range of 10 to 12, 13, and then when they reached this amount of stacks they just stayed in until their stack dropped, and then they went outside and stacked from 0 again. You should have one person in the raid announcing who's going in to debuff the boss and keeping track of the stacks of the individual people. For us it was one of our tanks who did it. When we first started on this boss, we had trouble keeping track of the stacks of debuff on the boss. But you can use several mods to keep track of that, like Weak Aura, as you can see here. It just shows the amount of stacks of the debuff on my target. To summarize the Carry Fog ability, I show you this picture I made just for fun for our guild. So you see her in the middle, and what's important, the debuffers and the raid should be opposite of each other, and the tanks should position themselves so they don't get hit by the debuff. Generally you should have the person with the most stacks of the debuff debuffing the boss, which is especially important during the special phases like Getaway and Protect, because you want to have these 2 over as quickly as possible. from a healer perspective, it is not that easy to heal, because during Protect you will have a lot of damage on the tanks, and Getaway is in general quite stressful to heal, especially if DPS is not that high and you have trouble keeping her out of it. What you should do is set up a rotation for your healers to use their cooldowns during Getaway, so you don't blow more than one cooldown during one phase. For example, we had our druid use Tranquility first, and the second Getaway was covered by the shaman, and so on. While the cooldowns might not be up for every Getaway, it certainly helps if you don't use more than one. If you have a priest in your roster, you should have him spec Discipline and use Atonement a lot, so you can have two healers healing properly and the priest just DPSing. Because of the debuff on the boss, Atonement will do quite a bit of healing as well. This is also one of the few fights where Halo is actually useful in 10-man healing, because you can just use it to find her during hide. I know it doesn't look as good on the meters as if you would use Spirit Shell before Getaway, but I used it during Protect on the tanks, because this is really going to hurt, especially without the Paladin. Just a few quick words in general. When she does hide, have the raid move outside of her so the tanks can take her in the middle again, and the raid will not get stacks of spray debuff. The best time to use Bloodlust is probably the last Protect phase at 20%, because this really hurts and should be over soon. Also, you can DPS her down quickly afterwards. With this, I hope you're set and should be ready to down her. Good luck.